The CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Supply chain attack hits phone provider 3CX. Tech bigwigs ask for an AI pause, and some dismal numbers in password security and cybersecurity preparedness. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we get a chance for some insight, opinion, and expertise on these stories and more from our returning guest making his third appearance on the show, Brett Conlon, the CISO at American Century Investments. Brett, great to have you back.
Excited to be here, and I'm going to be soon have more appearances here than Tom Brady does have Super Bowl championships. So very
Well,
excited.
the plaque's in the mail, so you can hang it up next time you're on. Before we move on, of course, we have to thank our sponsor, Trend Micro. Discover, assess, mitigate. Remember, you can join us on YouTube Live to do so. Go to CISOseries.com, hit the events drop down, and look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. It's the third one down. You'll find it right there. Just click on it to join us and get in on all the fun. We've got about 20 minutes, though. We'll let you do that. We'll proceed with the show, and we'll see you here. First up here, 3CX is hit with a supply chain attack. An ongoing supply chain attack has led to the compromise of the VoIP installations from the company. Hackers, likely a North Korean APT group, appear to have compromised the network of thousands of businesses through malware that, according to Velocity Intelligence, used GitHub to modify updates for Windows and macOS versions of the 3CX desktop app. So, Brett, obviously, this company provides office phone systems to more than 12 million daily users at over 600,000 companies around the world. A lot of high-profile names here, like Coca-Cola, McDonald's. I mean, name your Fortune 500. Mandiant is suggesting this is not a surprise attack, and so clearly kind of a messy situation for 3CX as well as its customers. I'm curious, what's your take on this specific story and the fact that these types of attack continue to happen?
I think this is a great story in a sort of eye-opening way to say, I think a lot of times we focus on an attack, and we've talked a lot about third-party breaches and how they are using that, but look at the pure disruption to businesses just by going after one company. If this doesn't resonate with you on how important that third-party security is, we're talking 12 million users just by going after one company. And what was the purpose of it? Who else do they provide phone service to? Are there security companies there? Was this an attempt to lock up their systems, or is it merely a distraction to focus you on that while they're doing something else? Did they gain intelligence to critical infrastructure? So much happens in this. I think oftentimes we always think of the attack and how do we respond, but there's a lot going on in just pure cyber disruption, and this really speaks to that.
Yeah, this got me thinking. There's always the old saying that, like, attackers just have to succeed one time, and after thousands of attempts to disrupt you. And just thinking of that in terms of not just for your organization, like increasingly we're seeing all of these stories when it comes to third party vendors that it's not just within your four walls or whatever you want to call it. It is everything kind of that's connecting to you as well, and that kind of realization that's just how you have to be thinking about your threat landscape, or basically at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, you could have done everything right on your network and you still got disrupted because of someone else.
All right, our next story here, open letter from industry big shots calls for AI pause. That's over 1,000 people signed an open letter calling on all AI labs to immediately pause for at least 6 months the training of AI systems more powerful than GPT-4. Incidentally, that sounds like it was written perhaps by ChatGPT. Signees include Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, Stability AI founder and CEO Ahmad Mostak, and Tristan Harris of the Center for Humane Technology, as well as engineers from Google and Meta. The letter argues the level of planning and management required for these kind of systems just isn't happening, and that the industry is instead locked in an out-of-control race to develop ever more powerful models. Notably, no one from OpenAI or other kind of AI leading companies like Anthropic have signed the letter. Brett, some observers are suggesting this request is coming from companies maybe caught flat-footed by the explosion of AI and want a chance to catch up, maybe a kind of a Hague Convention for the 21st century, while others say this is a prudent request in light of AI's seemingly uncontrolled influence over every part of our lives. I'm curious, which side do you fall on, and would a pause be feasible or possibly even dangerous?
Well, I think first of all, when we talk about this, if we've got Elon Musk and Steve Wozniak signing it, then you're probably right. It was probably people who weren't really thinking forward and got caught flat-footed. But for those of us who probably don't think that, I think that this is history repeating itself again. How many times do we have to do the same thing and expect a different result, right? So I am in favor of pausing it because this is really just a drive to be first. We want to accelerate innovation, and we're doing it at the cost of security. We're doing this without fully thinking through what's going to happen. And we're going to talk about topics later on where we're talking and seeing that cyber converging with physical and what happens. We come out, we're not secure by design. We have people gaining access to other people's cameras when we talk about IoT. Then we had the hacking of IoT devices, and they were using it to gain networks. Then we had the Dyn DNS outage because of using those hacks. So here we are, brand new technology, doing some really cool things. We have all these companies now. Microsoft just did Security Copilot, very cool. But I do think pausing it and making sure that we've done security by design, that we've got the right checks and balances in place, is important. And I think that we have seen that time and time again play out. I mean, look at all of these articles that we've got right now. Why would we expect a different result now?
Yeah, it for all these tech companies rushing into this field, short memories seems they're embracing their inner goldfish. It seems. All right, next up here is some dismal numbers in password security and cybersecurity preparedness. This kind of pulls together two stories we saw this week. The first, a report from SlashNext showing that 4 out of 5 employees store sensitive work passwords on their personal phones, and 2/3 use their personal texting apps for work. And another report from Immersive Labs that showed that 82% of teams agreed that they could have mitigated some or all of the damage of a significant cyber incident in the last year if they had been better prepared. And more than 80% don't think, or at least are unsure, their teams have capabilities to respond to future attacks. Not exactly an inspiring read on either of these fronts here. Cybersecurity leaders seem to be playing an endless game of catch up. Brett, do you agree with these findings? Does this reflect what you're seeing?
I agree with some of them. Uh, when we talk about employees using text messaging, I think we've seen that in the financial sector. There's been some huge fines because of that. And so, you're seeing a lot of the companies now start to crack down on using your personal device for work. In the financial sector, you absolutely cannot do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's regulation around it now. Um, in other sectors, I think they have to think about this. If you are starting a culture where you are texting on personal devices and outside of those corporate communications, you're expecting this to happen then, and you can't act shocked when it does. I think there's also a reflection point for security people. We're seeing people and use password managers. That's fantastic. They're doing it on their personal device. Why? What have we created in the environment itself that they're not using it at work? I can assure you, most people don't want to be putting all of these passwords on their personal device. So, what haven't we done there? And I think that that's something for us to look at and say, how can we improve? You hear a lot about educating users, 100% agree to that. But I think you have to also look at what kind of barriers have I put in place to prevent them from using it at work. The the other stuff around the security leaders and cybersecurity teams being fully staffed, it was the other statistics that sort of caught me on looking at it. So 84% of respondents agree that cybersecurity teams feel increasing pressure to be prepared for the next cyber attack. So 16% don't? That's a problem. Um, 29% apparently didn't agree that the threat landscape is becoming more challenging. So they're either not listening to this show or they're not reading the headlines. I don't understand how we are there and we're saying that. Um, Senior leaders sharing breach readiness. I think this is somewhere that I have a very strong CISO network. I think it's great how often we talk. It's disappointing coming to these security conferences and watching people on their phones. Your peers are right there and you're not talking to them. And then you're wondering why you're not properly prepared on here. Um, so and then some of the same stuff. The cybersecurity team is understaffed. We have a talent management challenge. Is that really just to cybersecurity though? I bet you if I go around and talk to the finance department, the technology department, they're all going to give me the same thing. They have a talent management problem, hard to find the right people. They feel that they're short staffed. I still think we're not there yet in utilizing our resources properly. I still go out there every day and see all of these unrealistic expectations and job postings. I think that we have to really look at what we're doing and how we're hiring on that. But this is definitely some statistics that were concerning. I'm going to go talk to Immersive Labs and figure out where I need to stray away from in companies. But
Can you let me know who thinks everything is super chill with
yeah,
cybersecurity right now? I
that
don't
there's
want to be working with those people.
that nothing is changing. Love to
Yeah.
hear about it.
Yeah, I want to know where you're living because honestly, it sounds pretty great. All right, our next story here. Inaudible ultrasound attack can stealthily control your phone. Smart speakers. American University researchers have developed a novel attack called Near Ultrasound Inaudible Trojan, or NUIT, if you want to make it sound uncool, that can launch silent attacks against devices powered by voice assistants, things like smartphones, smart speakers, and other IoT devices. This technique can be used on Apple's Siri, Google's Assistant, Microsoft's Cortana for those diehards, and Amazon's voice assistant. And the main principle that makes NUIT effective is that microphones in smart devices can respond to near ultrasound waves that the human ear cannot. Thus, you could perform an attack with minimal risk of people hearing it, with conventional speaker technology. Brett, I guess we should have just listened to our dogs, right? Just install a dog by every smart speaker and we'll kind of be good to go here. Do you think people actually try to use this? It's like a very interesting exploit, but could I talk to your Amazon speaker through this interview right now and, kind of tell it to open your garage door a bunch of times?
Well, so according to it, it says you can. I haven't seen this in action, but I do think this is a great thing. Of earlier, we're talking about do we go forward or pause AI? Now we're hearing, okay, look, with the exception of, I believe they said Siri, nobody is requiring an actual vocal fingerprint. It's just a generic vocal voice. Any voice will work, and it can actually sit there and go through your speaker, apparently, and open a door. So think about that for a second. We're wondering, do we pause AI? And we're saying, here's an IoT piece hack that's been out for years, and now we're showing you how to do that. You can open a door, you can turn a camera off, you could turn lights on. I could turn water on then. If I'm out of town
Yeah.
and I turn water on that, I think the most disappointing part of this story is that they're presenting in Anaheim instead of DEF CON. So do we need to be worried about it if it's not at DEF CON? They're at the exact same time.
That is super interesting from an optics standpoint. I do think we are seeing some, to your point about secure by design, we're seeing the EU and the UK trying to make some moves on this by trying to introduce like much more stringent IoT stuff. But to your point, we've had over a decade now of kind of just white box IoT gear that's in anywhere from homes to enterprise and stuff like that is not getting patched. Not even voice assistants. I'm talking about like that genie is kind of out of the bottle already for a lot of places, and we're kind of dealing with the impacts of that. So interesting from a security standpoint to see where we're at with two different kind of technology verticals there. Before we move on, we have to spend a few moments to thank our sponsor, Trend Micro. Cybersecurity is not just about protection; it's about foresight, agility, and resilience. Navigating a new era of cyber risk demands evolved strategies, new frameworks, and integrated tools to equip security teams to anticipate and defend against even the most advanced attacks. Trend Micro, the global leader in cybersecurity, is bringing the cyber risk conversation to more than 120 cities around the world in their latest Risk to Resilience World Tour, the largest cybersecurity roadshow of its kind. Find the closest city to you and register today to take a leap towards a more resilient future. Head to trendmicro.com/CISO Series. Panera Bread will use palm scanning technology for its loyalty program. Panera Bread is rolling out palm scanners that will link customers' handprints to their loyalty accounts. I believe this is starting in St. Louis and Seattle, a move the company paints as a convenient but that privacy advocates have decried. The biometric gathering technology developed by Amazon, so not surprising to see it in Washington, will hit stores in the next few months. The gadgets will help suggest menu items based on customers' order histories and allow employees to greet customers by their names and share customers' available rewards and some other stuff, according to Panera's press release. So, Brett, Panera's loyalty program boasts 52 million members, and although only a subsegment of these will likely take this up, digital rights advocates worry that the information could be tapped by anything from federal agencies or to anywhere from malicious actors. Couldn't the same be said, I guess, for your standard smartphone loyalty apps or anything that's collecting your biometric information? Does this raise your privacy hackles?
It does not raise my privacy hackles. I don't think this is any riskier than what we're doing with facial recognition and fingerprints. I think it's interesting that what you're seeing here from all of these companies, and Panera has actually been one of those leading in the technology spaces. They're trying to remove the friction. They don't need your palm print to tell you and give you suggestions on what your orders are. So there's a reason that they're doing this, and somehow they feel that if they offer this thing up, they're probably going to get more subscribers. They're not doing it to provide this, what do you want to order? Here's what we recommend. They don't need the palm print for that. They just need to know who you are and what you've ordered in the past, and they have that through the loyalty thing. I think it's funny when we talk about, are we worried about Big Brother having this information? You should be worried about the private companies having this information. Right now, we're talking about one franchise, and so AWS is going to have it, and now Panera will have it. And when you hit OK, and I agree, what did they share and with who? Because you hit I agree on that little phone that you've got, and everyone seems to be eager to do this. You're going to have people sign up because they want to see how it works. The only way you can see how it works is to sign up and give them your palm print. So I think that, again, the more that we're collecting of this, knowing that the hacks are out there, right now someone is reading this and they're going to try to see if when this goes live, can they get access to that information? Expect it.
Yeah. And yeah, anytime you put a potentially valuable data set, I mean, regardless of whether there's biometrics attached to it, that just makes it a big target. But you're right. This is what I'm concerned about. Not concerned about. I'm sure at some point we'll see a story, whether it's Panera or another company that's doing this kind of biometric stuff, is in the TOS, it says we reserve the right to provide this information to a third party, and then the whatever implications of that, then we start talking about third party risk, whether they're selling it or they get hacked or something like that. That's when this gets kind of a privacy issue. Although I guess in the broad scheme of things, there's worse biometric information than your palm to leak out there. I prepare to put my foot in my mouth when I discover the horrible things that people can do with my palm scan. Our next story here: debt servicing giants expose financial data. This week, the Pennsylvania-based collections firm NCB Management Services sent out breach notification letters disclosing a cyber attack it detected on February 4th, which included PII and credit card numbers on just under 495,000 people. Meanwhile, Australia's Latitude Financial says data on 14 million customers was lost in a breach. So, Brett, as someone who works in the financial sector, albeit investments, not lending or collections, what do you make of the that standard wrote 2 years of credit monitoring as a concession to customers whose PII, in the case of NCB, it was social security numbers, bank accounts, and stuff was in there too, now on the dark web through no fault of their own?
This hits close to home. So one of my best friends had this happen to them, and I'm going to sort of break down how this works because I think this is the biggest misconception that occurs. And frankly, I think we can do better. But we are giving people a false sense of security when we talk to them about credit monitoring. So we've talked today about, people wanting to capture your palm print. We know that we've got facial recognition out there. We know that we have thumbprints out there, and we know that we have issues with keeping this data away from hackers. So what does a hacker do, or what does a person do once they have your social, your phone number, your address, your name? They can now parlay this into digital theft, which that helps with the credit monitoring. But what about actual fraud, where they come, they get your license. Now they can walk into a bank. They have everything they need to commit actual fraud and take the money out of your account. And I think that's where it's lost, because then the person who got impacted sits there and says, okay, well, no, I have credit monitoring. Well, hold on. Credit monitoring is around certain things. It doesn't help protect your checking account. But most people don't talk about that, and they don't know about that. A credit freeze versus credit monitoring are very different. What about this actor who can then go open a mortgage for you under your name, a loan under your name? All of that stuff is not always identified. And I think that we can do better of just than offering it. We can educate and make recommendations on what they should do in that scenario. I don't think that exists today. I haven't seen it done very well. And so I'm almost seen a numbness now to where people expect their credentials or their information to be compromised, and they don't think anything can happen. They haven't really experienced that real fraud. And when that happens, it's not easy getting your money back. And you think it would be, but you've got to talk, you're talking the police, you're talking the FBI. How much money are you talking about? And is it worth their time?
Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective coming from the financial sector on that, because yeah, I mean, I definitely have fallen into that where you see these stories and 495,000, when we're talking about data breaches every single week, can be numbing at times to see the impact of that. So definitely something, as an increasing number of people unfortunately are in this situation, and it seems like we're having tools that are better at automating all sorts of interactions as of late. If I think the problem right now is those don't scale, so the individual impact to someone, it can be devastating. To your point, but now as we're approaching more tools where that kind of level of fraud could potentially scale in a way that we've never seen before, that's where it really gets scary, and that credit monitoring doesn't sound so nice. And our final story here: 1 million pen tests show companies' security postures are getting worse. On Tuesday, analysis from 1 million pen tests revealed that data exfiltration risk increased to an average score of 44 out of 100 in 2022 from an average risk score of 30 the prior year. That's from a report from Simulate, who's said one key reason for the increased risk is attackers improving tactics to circumvent network and group policies. Of course, Brett, on a positive note, the report shows that companies have improved malware detection across major platforms, with many attacks being blocked by web gateways. So when you compare this to kind of our earlier story about those dismal password and other numbers there, what does your crystal ball say about the future of cybersecurity?
I think this backs the earlier thing of just we should go full forward with AI and not worry about anything, right? It basics. This is about basics. I do think this is a harder report to sit there and say, are we really getting worse? Attackers are getting more sophisticated. The attacks are becoming more sophisticated then, and our ability to keep up and block those sophisticated attacks, of course, are going to get harder. So are we doing worse, or are they just getting more creative and therefore finding new things that were always there? As you close one door, they might find 3 more doors to open up, and I think that might be what we're seeing here. I also worry a little bit about when we say, well, we're blocking malware. This comes back to making sure that you're addressing risk. So knowing your threat landscape absolutely is part of that. But if you find yourself in a program where you're jumping from one thing to the next and sort of following the news cycles versus here's our strategy, here's our program, and here's what we're going to be focused on that reduces our company's risk, then I think if you're doing the risk piece with the basics, that's great. If you're really just chasing like, well, malware's been everything we're talking about, so therefore we address the malware, well, that might not have been the greatest risk for you. And so I think that is the part that I get concerned about when I read this report. I'm feeling like we still have people that are chasing what they see in the news, and the strategy is not there. And the Immersive Labs report, albeit there's some concerning items in there. They had a large amount of people that don't feel that they have a cybersecurity strategy. This shows that.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, Brett, was there any story that you reacted strongly to today? A thumbs up or an eye roller? And did it start with AI?
AI is definitely one of those things. And I think even AI for me as a security professional, um, I am definitely very interested in it. I want to know as much as we can about it. But every time I get on LinkedIn now, I can't wait. Tomorrow's going to be like our tool for security professionals helps you protect against AI. Okay, so that'll be the next greatest thing out there. And I also the statistics on the Immersive Labs report, it's worrisome. I if this is what we're seeing and we're still really not doing a good job of creating our strategy and we're coming out with unrealistic expectations for our hiring of people, and we have 16% of companies. If it's a bank, please let me know, because if we're not worried about cybersecurity at all and we think we've got it all covered, I want to go meet with you and figure out what I'm doing wrong. So, but I think those are the two for me that speak out.
Well, thank you so much, Brett Conlon, the CISO at American Century Investments, being a fantastic return guest, truly the Joan Rivers to my Johnny Carson. Where can people find you if they are so inclined on the cyberspace?
I am on LinkedIn. Just look up Brett Conlon, American Century, and I'll be there.
Fantastic. And thank you so much to our sponsor, Trend Micro. Discover, assess, mitigate. A reminder, there will be no Super Cyber Friday next week, but we will be back with another episode of the Week in Review show. So we will see you next week. And in the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines every single day. Give us about 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. You can also subscribe to the show through our newsletter on LinkedIn. You can read and hear all the stories of the day right in your inbox. Just go to the CISO Series page on LinkedIn to subscribe. I'm Rich Stroffolino. We'll see you next week, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.